Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our broadcast tonight. Uh, we're live on location at Mark's house in Wauwatosa. We had a few technical difficulties, so we're using my laptop, so we got to kind of share the screen here. Tonight, Mark's going to be talking about ancient translations, various translations, and so we'll turn it over to him. Take it away, Mark.
It's just going to be a brief overview of the earliest known copies, and then one thing that we've got to deal with here is that none of these things line up with one another, and I'm still going to have to deal with the debate between the Septuagint and the Masoretic, and I'm still not sure where I stand on that, but that is just a very frustrating argument right there, but I'm just going to go through this chronologically. I'm going to start off with the earliest known copies of the Old and New Testament. I'm going to start off with the New Testament. And what we got is, we'll start off with Codex Vaticanus, discovered at Vatican City in the Vatican Library between 325 and 350, found in the 1400s. It has everything except for Revelation, or almost everything. But supposedly, numerous errors were made in the process, and it's been altered in over 200 places. It's considered to be the second best behind Sinaiticus. It's missing Hebrews 9:15 to 13:25 to the end. It's also missing Timothy, Titus, Philemon, and Revelation. Then we've got Codex Sinaiticus, which is the gem. That's the best one from 330 to 360. We're at St. Catherine's Monastery at the foot of at the Sinai Peninsula in 1844 and 1853 by Constantine von Tischendorf, who was an amazing guy. He had a PhD at the University of Leipzig in Germany in 1838 in theology, and for some reason he thought that he could find something there, and he knew that they had a very old library there. And he went there and rode on a camel there in 1844, and sure enough, he hit the jackpot. And he was looking through a wicker basket, and there were some old scrolls in there, and he was looking at them and sheets of paper, and he asked the people there, "What are you going to do with this?" And they said, "Well, we're going to use it to start fires." I guess, this is in a desert. They didn't have a lot of firewood, and these people apparently didn't really even know what was in that library. Well, if Tischendorf had gotten there one day later, he would have missed out, because they were about to burn the earliest known copy of the New Testament. It was not, he didn't find all of it there at that time. He went back again in 1853 and found the rest of it. And it's one of the greatest finds of all time. It's in perfect shape. It contains all the books of both Testaments. And it's in the British Library in London right now. Then we've got the Peshitta. Now this thing, the age of it is more controversial. The oldest known copies are from 442 to 460. And there's copies of the Old Testament from the 2nd and 3rd century. The earliest New Testament is from the 5th century. Now, supposedly, it was copied from the Caboras Codex from the 11th century and is missing 5 books: 2nd Peter, 2nd and 3rd John, Revelation, and John 7, 53 verses and 8 through 11. It's also missing. All right, now here's the thing about the Peshitta.
When some people are saying that you could spell the translations, the names.
All right, the Peshitta is spelled Peshitta. And there's a big controversy over what it was translated from. Almost everybody thinks it was translated from a Greek text. But there's other people that say that no, I mean, the Peshitta is an Aramaic. And a lot of people think that it was originally in Aramaic, but most people don't think that they think that it was translated from Aramaic into Greek and then back into Aramaic. But that's not what I think. I think that it was only Paul's letters to the Greek-speaking people that were originally in Greek. He was the only author of the New Testament that spoke Greek. The others would have had to have written in the only language that they knew, which would have been Aramaic, the same language as the Peshitta. So it was about half and half split. Paul wrote about half of the New Testament, so it was about half in Greek and half in Aramaic. Nobody ever told me that, but I mean, that's really kind of obvious. So how does the Peshitta stack up to these other ones? Well, first let me get to a few more. But that's the main issue I want to get at. And then you got Ephraemi Rescriptus, early 5th century, originally had all the books, but they're almost all gone. There's hardly any of it left. There's only like a little part of the Old Testament left. Codex Bezae around 400, unknown origin, named after a Protestant scholar, Theodore Bezae, contains all the four Gospels and Acts and part of John. It's held at Cambridge University, but it really doesn't have very much in it. It's been there since 1581. And then here's a commentary on Bizet. The Codex has a text very different from other witnesses. Codex Bizet has many distinctive and longer, shorter readings and seem to be almost a separate edition. Its Acts, for example, is 1/10 longer than usual. It is characterized by a series of remarkable omissions in Luke, especially in chapters 22 and 24, and many striking additions and variations in Acts. Now, that was from the introduction to the Revised Standard Version from 1952. Now, here's something else that we've got here. Well, wait a minute. Let me get to. All right, let's go to the Latin Vulgate. That was 382. And it was translated from an earlier Latin translation called the Vetus Latina.
Yeah, sorry.
Rome was commissioned by Pope Damascus I in 382. And now you might say, well, they already had a Latin translation. Why were they redoing it? Well, here's what Jerome had to say about the Vetus Latina and other things. They write down not what they find, but what they think is the meaning. And while they attempt to rectify errors, they merely expose their own. He added that the corruptions were so numerous that the difference of the old and new revised text is clear and striking throughout. So he came up with the Latin Vulgate. Now, we don't know, he did use some Greek text, but we don't know which ones. Now, to my knowledge, he did not delete anything from the Vetus Latina, but he did make additions, mostly in the four Gospels. But I don't trust the Vetus Latina. So what do we have here now? Now, all right, now here's something else. Now, I went over the earliest known texts. And here's from the introduction to the New King James, which I've been using since 1985. It came out back in 83, and it says, dependence on these manuscripts, especially two, the Sinaitic and the Vaticanus manuscripts, is due to the great age of these documents. However, in spite of the age of these materials, some scholars have shown reason to doubt the faithfulness of the manuscripts to the original text, since they often disagree with one another and show other signs of unreliability. Now, I don't know what those signs are, but those are the earliest known texts, and they're saying that they're not reliable. So what do we have to go on here? Now, I just want to do a little, want to point out that, okay, Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus are almost the same age. They're almost the same. But the Peshitta supposedly has a different source than those two. And like I said, about half the New Testament was originally in Aramaic. And Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, all the other ones are originally in Greek. So, is the Peshitta better? Some people think that it is. It is missing those 5 books. But I will have to point out in defense of the Peshitta that it did get a very important verse right in Matthew 1:16, which is they've got the genealogy of Jesus. And in Matthew 1:16, it's really Mary's genealogy. In Luke 3:23 through 38, it's actually Joseph's genealogy. And that's why these names are different. And the Peshitta clears it up in verse 16, where instead of saying the husband of Mary, it says the Gowra, Gowra, which means guardian. And Mary had a guardian named Joseph. So it was 2 different genealogies. And the Peshitta got it right, all the others got it wrong. What do we got here? So I want to go forward to the revealed text. Now, up until 1952, nearly all translations were based on the revealed text by Erasmus from Rotterdam, Holland, published in 1516. He was translating from uh, from Greek texts. We don't know which ones they were. And that's what almost everybody else translated from, including William Tyndale. Now, and also the King James, it came from that. Now, here's a commentary on what the King James, about the King James from the Revised Standard Version from 1952. It had several defects. It was based on a Greek text that was marred by mistakes containing the accumulated errors of 14 centuries of manuscript copying. It was essentially the Greek text of the New Testament and edited by Bizet in 1589, closely followed by Erasmus 1516 to 1535, which was based on a few medieval manuscripts. The earliest and best of the 8 manuscripts which Erasmus consulted was from the 10th century, and he made the least use of it because it differed most from the commonly received text. Bizet had access to 2 manuscripts of great value dating from the 5th and 6th centuries, but he made very little use of them because they differed from the text published by Erasmus. So this is where almost all the translations were coming from that one flawed text, including the Tyndale translation the and also the King James. However, since 1952, there have been several other translations that were not based on the revealed text, and that would include the New International Version, the English Standard Version, the New American Standard Bible, the New Living Translation, which I hate. Then there's the Christian Standard Bible. Well, anyway, but the New Living came out in 1996, and it uses the word love 317 more times than in the King James. And I don't know what those people were on when they translated it, but it's getting a little ridiculous. The hippie translation, but it's not based on the revealed text. What do I got? All right, now I want to go to the English language Bible. Now, the first English language Bible was in 1382, translated from the Latin Vulgate by John Wycliffe. He was a don at Oxford, and then, well, he was immediately fired at Oxford University. He died a couple of years later. He died at the end of 1348. But in early 1401, the Parliament passed a law called the De Heretical Comburendo, which was specifically targeted at a group called the Lollards, which was founded by John Wycliffe. And Wycliffe believed that everybody should have access to the Bible in their own language. That was banned by the Catholic Church at the Council of Toulouse in 1229. Then in 1408 in Britain, the Third Synod of Oxford, they banned any English language translations. That was in direct response to the Wycliffe Bible. And to this day, I mean, this is before the printing press. And all these were hand copied. There's about 250 of them that still remain. One of them sold at auction in 2016 for $1,692,000, which is a steal. But there's only 2 Tyndale Bibles left, and they're both damaged. But those were the first English language Bibles to be printed with a printing press. 1522 is when Luther translated the Bible into German. But now let's go to 1525. William Tyndale translated the New Testament into English, but he was translating it from the revealed text by Erasmus. That's the best he had to work with. And then the later translations were based on the Tyndale translation, including the King James, and also there was the Coverdale Bible in 1535. Then there was the Matthew's Bible in 1537. He had the Great Bible issued in 1539 by Henry VIII. It was based on the Latin Vulgate. He put out 9,000 copies in 1541 and ordered them to be distributed to each church in Britain, but then changed his mind the very next year and had them all retracted in 1542. Now, in 1536, on October 6th, William Tyndale was burned for translating and printing the Bible in the English language. Henry VIII was there. Then Henry turns around. Bible printed in English based on Tyndale's translation. So it's kind of funny how that one worked out. Henry VIII had 89 people burned for heresy in his reign, including Tyndale and Askew. All right. The Great Bible was retracted in 1542. What? All right. 1543. Parliament makes it a crime for an unlicensed person to read scripture in public. Uh, this was uh, this was after Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church. That was November 3rd, 1533. But Henry continued to enforce Catholic doctrine to the end of his life on January 27, 1547. The only difference between the Church of England was there was their leader. The doctors were the same. They kept all the same personnel in the same positions, and it was the same company with a different sign on it. So the Church of England was really the same thing as the Catholic Church, but with a different pope. But they banned anyone to read publicly any scriptures, and that's what got Anna Skew killed July 16th, 1546. She was one of the gospelers that would memorize large portions of the Bible and then teach it to others. That was highly illegal, and it got her killed. That's how it was then, even after Henry broke from the Catholic Church. After Henry died, then his son Edward VI took over, but he only lasted 6 years. Then Bloody Mary Tudor took over, and she had 350 people burned for heresy in less than 4 years. Then after she died, there were hardly any more burnings. But all right, now in 1557, you had the Geneva Bible, and in which 90% of it was copied from the Tyndale Bible, and I guess it was very popular. That was the Bible that Shakespeare would have used. And in 1611, they had the King James Bible, but the Geneva Bible remained more popular than the King James for a long time. And I remember that one time on Pawn Stars, there was somebody that brought in a copy of the Geneva Bible, yeah, from 1557, and he wanted to sell it for $300. So they called in an expert, and she looks at it and she goes, "Yeah, sure enough, it's 1557 Geneva Bible, the same kind Shakespeare would have used." And then they go, "We don't want it." I don't know why they called in an expert. That never made sense to me, but they didn't want it. Then you got the 1611 King James. Now, supposedly, that brings you back to where were they getting it from, the Septuagint or the Masoretic? Supposedly, they were getting it from both. The translators were. Now, I want to come back to you got the Masoretic versus the Septuagint. And I've been studying this for a while. I've been watching all these YouTube videos on this, and no matter how I look at it, there's always pieces of the puzzle that don't fit. And they're quite different from one another, and they can't both be right. But supposedly the Septuagint was the Bible of the first century Christian church. And Paul quoted from it, and even Jesus quoted from it. And but it is different in the chronology, in particular in Genesis 5, Genesis 11. It varies by 13 centuries. It throws the whole timeline off by 13 centuries. I never could explain that. And then I was watching how they said, well, Josephus had a lot to say about the Septuagint, and he thought that it was a legitimate translation. But the Septuagint has the Apocrypha in it, and Josephus did not believe in the Apocrypha. But remember, when they made the Septuagint, at first they only did the Torah, and it took them at least a century to finish the rest of it. And I think that Josephus may have only believed in the Torah portion of the Septuagint. Now, I know John Leach knows more about this than I do because I remember hearing you speak about it at the feast in Iowa. I think that was 12 years ago. So if you want to throw in your 2 cents, let's hear it.
This time we will open up for.
Wait.
Whoa.
I wanted to talk about who determined the canon. This won't take that long.
Okay.
But there's a lot of myths about this that I want to clear up. Now, supposedly, a lot of people think that the Emperor Constantine determined the New Testament canon at Nicaea in 325. They never even discussed it. He had nothing to do with that. Then I've read that it was determined at the Council of Laodicea in 364, where they made a list of it. However, it turns out they actually did not discuss it there. Then I read that the New Testament canon was determined in 167. Wait a minute, where was it? Oh yeah, Athanasius, Bishop of Alexandria, made a list of the 27 copies of the New Testament book on Easter of 367. And based on that, people have concluded that he determined what the New Testament canon was. Well, just because he made a list of it doesn't mean he determined which ones they were, because he didn't. And he never said that he did. And nobody has ever claimed that they determined any part of the New Testament canon. Supposedly the Masoretes determined the Old Testament canon around 800. That's not true. And they never said that they did that. There was never any convocation, any meeting where the canon of any part of the Bible was ever determined. Nobody knows who or when determined it or which books were supposed to be in the Bible. Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay, at this time, if you have any questions, any thoughts, ideas, um, this is when you can ask them. Alan.
Hey, hi. Thank you, Mark, for doing this. Can you see this? This is a copy of the Geneva Bible.
Yep, we see it.
The 1599 version. This is a modern one that was printed probably about 10 years ago. One of the things that's featured in here is about half of the page in many places, approximately a third to a half of the page is notes. Notes directly relating to the text itself. It isn't really a thorough study Bible, but it is exactly what you said it was, Mark. An earlier version, previous to the King James, and was very popular. And it was, I think you mentioned, I don't know if you did or not, it is the Bible that the Pilgrims brought with them.
Yeah.
When they came over to Plymouth in 1621, they left. Anyway, it's still a very good Bible to use for reference, and the notes are very good in that Bible. If you can get past the Old English, many places the F looks like an S. You've seen that print before, where the print, some of the letters look a little different, but it's good to own one if you want an older English, older than King James English. When I was a child, my mother was Catholic, but she quit going to the Catholic Church over various issues. And so there was a Catholic Bible in my house, and my dad decided to take me to church. He thought it would be a good idea for me to attend a church at about 9 years old, I guess I was. And he sent me with this Catholic Bible. And this Baptist minister looked at this Catholic Bible, and he thumbed through it for about 10 seconds. And he said, "You can still get saved even with this."
So yeah, they've got the Apocrypha, and that's another thing is that I personally don't believe in the Apocrypha.
No.
And here's another thing about the Peshitta, or not the Peshitta, but the Septuagint, is that it's missing there's 3,000 words. About 14% of the Hebrew Bible is not found in the Septuagint. And all, like I said, the timeline, the chronology in Genesis 5 and 11 is 1,300 years different. And that really is kind of a game changer. But I mean, I don't know how you're going to reconcile them, because now I was just watching this documentary saying, well, I mean, I've heard people say that the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed the Septuagint, and I've heard that it's the other way around, that the Masoretic texts line up perfectly with the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is which. And I tried to order a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I ordered a Penguin book that said the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. It didn't, but what they sent me does not contain any of the books of the Bible. I don't know where you can get those, but I wanted to do a comparison there. But I mean, it's and they were citing the case of the height of Goliath. And they were saying in the Septuagint, it's 4 cubits in one span. And in the Hebrew text, it's 6 cubits in one span. So we're talking about a 3-foot difference there. and they were saying that the copy in the Dead Sea Scrolls was going from the Septuagint version of it. But then there's other things that work the other way. They quote from the Hebrew text, not from the Septuagint. Same thing with the quotes of Jesus. So I mean, no matter how you look at it, it just there's always something that doesn't fit.
Well, obviously, a Greek uh, and a Hebrew span is not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was trying to make a point when that Baptist minister said you can still be saved with this Bible. It's, in his opinion, a substandard Bible. It was Catholic Bible, but my question is this: all these translations, whether it's from the received text or from the what they call the critical text, which is the Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, all these various differences. Is one of these Bibles going to prevent us from being called if God calls that person? And if that's the only Bible they have, can they get spiritual meat? Can they be fed through that word? Is there such a difference? Do they believe that God created the world and all that is in it? Do they believe in all these Bibles that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world and he is the only way to atonement? Do they believe in the basic core message of the Bible? What's your answer?
Any other questions, comments, thoughts, ideas? Gloria.
Hi, thanks for that very brief, fast. Yeah, feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose. Really appreciate it though. I got to see the Bible display, the 400 years of the Bible in 2011 as it was touring the United States. And one of the places was about 2 hours from here. And so they had copies of the Geneva Bible. They told the story of Wycliffe and Tyndale and all these, had all these different Bibles there. One of the things that I came away from with an kind of a gut kind of feeling is when Wycliffe and Tyndale were having the Bibles in English, when quote unquote the powers that be decided that realized that nothing was going to stop the Bible from being available in different languages, the pages that they ended up putting out, the Bibles they put out after that, are very beautiful. They have lots of colors in them. There's, they're kind of like these picture Bibles almost. And I was thinking about it. If they couldn't stop it, then they were going to cloud it with all of this other stuff instead of people actually reading the text that was there. It was kind of that interesting thing. And then now we have so many different translations, and we end up talking about translations more than what is it that you really need to be talking about as far as, So it's good to have these discussions, but I just wanted to mention that. I wonder if you have any thoughts on any of that.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to diminish the Bible in any way. I'm not trying to cast any doubt on it, but these are important issues, and they've always fascinated me. And this whole subject is a very tough nut to crack because we're trying to find out what the truth is. Where do we look? Because there are differing texts, and I don't have all the answers because there's always different theories. And I'm just telling you what I know. I'm just giving you just a basic overview here.
Okay, any other thoughts, ideas, or questions? Oh, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think if you check it out, Mark, you'll find the first King James, 1611, contained the Apocrypha too.
Yeah.
So I think it was kept separate, the same as the Septuagint keeps it separate. So I think the problem can be solved with Apocrypha with a pair of scissors. And I think I had a Bible, had a King James, and had lots of pictures of Christ, and uh, and I didn't like that, and I solved that problem with a pair of scissors. Uh, so just some ideas.
I remember back I think it was 2001, John Merritt sponsored the leader of the Sentinel Sabbath Association. And the gentleman was saying there's only one uninspired page in the Bible, and that is the page that divides the New Testament from the Old Testament. And you could hear people tearing that page out of the Bible in the audience. So it was kind of funny. Chris?
Now that is humorous. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, good evening. And thanks, Don, for hosting. And thank you very much, Mark, for your study and the time you put in on it. I really appreciate the points you made. And I was just noodling here on, the comments, but I think that if you look at a lot of the translations, and I too have looked at a lot of different translations, trying to parse out unique instances of the way the verse reads, etc. And, the Greek and the Hebrew, I think we all do that. And my observations are that more than 95% of the texts still deliver the same message. And Jesus Christ is the center figure of all of it. Nowhere in any of those texts have I ever run into a scripture that talks about Easter Sunday or Christmas or Halloween or anything like that. And it's remarkable. It talks about the holy days and all of the interesting things that we still study are in any of those texts. I know the Catholic text takes some of it out, but just an interesting observation. Thank you again.
Tom?
Yeah, good topic there, Mark. We've been using the Companion Bible. It's a um, it's a 1611 version, but it's got a ton of notes in it, and I find that that's kind of helpful too. The notes that are there. It has 198 appendixes and lots of other things as you're reading through. Do you have any thoughts on that particular type of a Bible where to some extent the Geneva Bible was like that, where it has a lot of notes in it, but this one's got a ton of them. If you comment on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
I don't know.
I don't think he's familiar with that version.
No.
It's just a 1611 Bible, but it's called the Companion Bible.
Oh, it's got the writer's notes in it.
Yeah, it's got a lot of documentation of it. I'm trying to see when it was published. Just a second.
Yeah.
1922. It was
Yeah.
originally 1922.
by
Thank you.
Bullinger.
Alan?
Yeah, I have a full-size copy of the companion, and it's by a guy named Bullinger. That was back at a time, of course, in 1922 when we didn't have electronic search tools. This guy obviously poured his entire life into these studies and creating these notes. As you look at the Bullinger Bible, one side of the page, on the left side, you'll see the text, and it's 1611 King James. But the second half of the page on the right side is a full column of references and notes and helps. And it has like CP, that means compare. So it'll say CP to this other verse and these other verses. And Bullinger's is actually a very good study Bible if you can get past the King James language. I myself, I cut my teeth on the King James Bible, so it's not a problem for me. But Bullinger's is a very good study Bible. It's not just like a read-through Bible. It's a Bible filled with references on every page. So it's a life's work from this man that's very valuable. I'm done.
Tom?
And I'd also like to add that I have the electronic version of that, which is proved to be a lot easier to read because it links back and forth to various things. So if you just highlight the area in the electronic one, it brings up all those texts. So I like to use that one. That's all. That's why I just mentioned it, Mark.
Gloria.
And just a question for Mark. Of all that you gave us, what is one or two of the kind of what started you on this journey? And then also, where are you? Well, I guess I got lots of questions. Where are you on this journey? And what is it you would like us to take away from what you've presented today?
Well, I mean, we all wanted, I thought everybody wanted to know where our Bible comes from. I thought that would be an obvious question, and I've always been fascinated by that because there's a lot of controversy about it where people have challenged it, and I'm just trying to verify it. But the thing is, there are different copies that different translations, and you got to use some discernment here, try to figure out what is what. And I'm just trying to find the truth. And but this is an awfully tough nut to crack. I don't have all the answers. I'm just throwing some things at you that I've been looking at for a long time.
Bill.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you are aware of Israelite Samaritan Torah that's in Paleo Hebrew, and then of course the Septuagint, and then the Hebrew, and then what I guess the question I'm asking, and I was on another Zoom earlier, so that's why I wasn't here, but um, are you basically talking about what is what are some of the best English translations to use, or are you talking about whether the original languages of Hebrew, Greek, and the Paleo Hebrew Israelites
Well,
American?
no, I mean, I went over the early English translations, but I'm trying to find the earliest known copies and what's in there and what's not. How do they compare to other copies? And there's four main ones early on that I went over. They're from the fourth century. The earliest known copies are from the fourth century.
So
I
what
mean, the
I've
New
got,
Testament.
what I've concentrated on now is the Masoretic text, the Hebrew text, the Paleo Hebrew, which is amazing, and very few seem like only the really scholars outside of the church have considered the Israelite Samaritan Torah, and then the Septuagint, which is really popular, but there's different manuscripts of it. I'm because I'm kind of wary of all English translations. Not that I wouldn't use them, but to make doctrine, I want to get to the basics. Like I was going to take, even with the Greek, I was going to take a course with a non-Church of God person about Greek, and one of the first things he says, the way they know there's a Trinity, is because the Parakletos, the word for "I'll send you another Comforter," and is translated "He will guide you into all truth," when it should, because the Greek has uh, has male and female on everything, on all almost all words. So he immediately started out saying that, that's why we know there's a Trinity, because the Parakletos is masculine instead of pneuma. So my point is that my question is, and I'm sorry that I didn't hear more of your earlier stuff presentation, but I was my point is, do we look at the Hebrew and Greek and Paleo Hebrew, or do we look at men's translations?
Well, of course, in the earliest known copies of the New Testament are in Greek, unless you want to count the Peshitta. But then, like I was saying, almost everybody thinks the Peshitta was translated from a Greek text, not in Aramaic. But I think that at least half of it was originally in Aramaic. But that's another story.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're saying, that you think the New Testament wasn't originally written in Greek, but it was in Hebrew?
About with Paul's letters to the Greek-speaking people were the only part of it that was originally in Greek. The rest of it was in Aramaic. Paul was the only author of the New Testament that spoke Greek.
One of the things that I learned early on in Worldwide was when Jesus died on the stake, he said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, and that is Aramaic. And then it says, which translated is, my God, and it's Eli, it's the Greek. So the point was made, why would it say which translated is? Why would, if it was all Aramaic, you wouldn't have to say it. But they did know his last words were in Aramaic, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani.
Well, yeah, that's what he spoke normally. They all spoke Aramaic.
But John is, isn't it? John is writing there what when Christ dies. So that's a proof that of the Greek. And basically the Greek, the Hebrew was translated into Greek 300 years before Christ. And all my scholarly stuff says that the Greek was considered the Bible of the Old Testament through all the dispersion, all the whole house of Israel and people scattered all over the world that came in at Pentecost. So I'm done.
John?
Yeah, Mark, in my research, from the time of Christ, before a couple hundred years and a couple hundred years after, I'd have to recheck that. But in Palestine and that area, the grave markers, 70% of them had Greek on them. So what language was they speaking? It appears there's a lot of Greek being spoken there
Yeah.
because of them grave markers. They're, to me, they're evidence. You hear this person say that and that person say that, but if you can view the grave markers and see what's written on them, and it was a Dutch name, the guy that did that research, and 70% had Greek on them, according to him.
Bill?
There is an interesting point. When Paul was knocked down, he later tells about it, and it's interesting to think about, why does it say this? He said, he was saying, Paul, Saul, 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 why are you persecuting me? And it says he spoke to him in Hebrew. Now, why was it even brought up that he was speaking to Paul in Hebrew if it was just automatically everybody was speaking Hebrew and not Greek? It's something to think about. I'm done.
I'm going to throw my hat in the ring here. We don't know for sure well, I imagine being Roman, they had some kind of an official language, but you had the Jews are speaking one thing, you had others speaking another thing, you had Romans are speaking something else. If you go into Milwaukee in the early mid 1960s, I can remember going to the far north side, hearing High German, going middle way, going and getting Low German. You would go down to the south side, Cudahy and that, and you would get Polish. Other places, Central Park, south of Milwaukee, it was Italian. And west of there, it was Little Mexico. It was Spanish. Here you have one city with several different languages. And people understood, some of them understood all of them. So I don't know why we're making such a thing on this. Oh, it's this, oh, it's that. It could be there may have been even more languages spoken. I growing up in a multi-language culture, I can see where it could be all different languages. And some people would be saying, oh no, Milwaukee, they speak German. Oh no, they speak Italian. Oh no, they speak Spanish. Oh no, they speak Polish. Well, some of them do mock English too. So I don't think it's really a big issue. It was several languages used. That's where I'm at. Alan?
Yeah, it's true. There were several. In the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 20, it says that the inscription, "This is the King of the Jews," was written in three languages. It was written in Hebrew, it was written in Greek, and in Latin. And why would you do that unless there were at least those three that were going to be the main languages of the day? I'm done.
Kayleen?
Thank you for the presentation. And I'm just at present because I'm here in the Philippines. You hear me now speaking in your language, but at the same time, I have to speak my own language and several other languages I hear around right now. The children, though, are being brought up since my neighbor, I live in an apartment complex, they're teaching their children's first language to be English. So what does that mean? The language evolves, but at the same time, just like Don said, we are using different languages simultaneously. Even as I speak English, um, like here it's fluent. There are in the city some younger generation speak not just bilingual but mixing three languages. Like my language has Spanish in it, not just the words, but now with the English we're putting it into our own language in Filipino, the adjectives. So like what Alan has said, the three languages are there and they're all pure in that sense, but there is a point that it evolves. And I think when it's sacred, you give more importance to the original. Like in our language, I could hardly understand our Bible in Filipino. It's so the old way. Now they have younger uh, translations or more recent in our own language, more recent, but I cannot adjust or accept some. So it's more like, okay, there's many languages, but what's important is the message correct and it's really coming from the Lord. So thank you.
Chris puts in the chat room for those people on the phone who can't read the screen. 1 Corinthians 2:14, the person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but concerns them foolishness and cannot understand them because they are discerned only through the Spirit. Bill?
Just going to confirm what Alan Turner beat me to the punch there. I was just going to say that Pilate wrote in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And I'd not even thought about this before, Alan, but obviously Pilate was trilingual, at least, or otherwise he had somebody else write it. I'm done.
Any other thoughts, ideas, comments, questions? I don't have anything from the YouTube. No questions yet in chat. I guess that's it. Well, Mark is an early morning, not a late night person. Geigers.
Yeah, hey, good evening. Mark, I appreciate your clear walk through this complicated topic, and I appreciate your humility because it's kind of debatable. Like you say, we don't have real clear, tight definition on a number of these things. But I think that the thing that kind of comes back to me is we know that we're told that if the Father draws us, there will be the potential of understanding. And he also gives the spirit of truth. Both of these things can lead us and guide us. And I agree with you. There are some question marks out there, but was it Al that said that like 95% of this, or someone said that like 95% of what is out there is consistent, regardless of what time and what translation. So the things that have varied a little bit, if you want to be really technical and critical and exacting, then you may have some problems. But in the areas where we're not understanding it, I think there's a reason why we're told to ask, to seek, and to knock, because it may not be real obvious if you don't ask and you don't seek and you don't knock. So again, I appreciate the efforts that you make to dig all of these things out. Really glad you do it because that's not something I'm inclined to do, but you simplified it, you laid it out. And like you said, you're not trying to slam dunk this, you're just trying to lay out what we know and try to piece it together best we can. So again, I appreciate your approach, and Scarlett, you got a comment too? Yep.
Oh, only if you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
Hey, Mark, thanks for this session tonight. I was looking forward to hearing about it. I wanted to clarify, did you say Tyndale, he was burned at the stake in 1536? Was that right?
Yeah, October 6, 1536, he was burned.
And wasn't, and maybe you brought this up tonight, I may have missed it. I think you brought it up before. What wasn't his prayer while,
Yeah, open up the king's eyes.
yeah, did you mention that tonight?
No.
No, I didn't. But that's what he said just before he burned.
Yeah.
And,
But his eyes didn't stay open for very long.
but in 1542, did you say that the king did reverse his edict?
Right. 1541, he wanted the Bible distributed to all the English churches. Then he changed his mind. But I guess a lot of churches kept their Bibles and they didn't give them back. But Henry was just a terrible person. He really
Wow.
was.
He must have been bipolar. Burn people to stake,
Um,
and then change his mind, and then change it back again. Well, wow. But I think it's inspiring to see the efforts that people have made over the years to preserve this book that God wrote. I mean, there's some issues, but overall, like that Catholic pastor said, you can be saved by this book, you know. So there's enough there for us. God gave us what we needed to know, I believe, and through the Holy Spirit working in us, we can parse other things.
Yeah. Just one other really heavy controversial question. Is that a Spitfire in the picture behind you?
Yeah,
Okay.
the Supermarine Spitfire that was taken over to North Africa in 1943. Well, I can't believe you can see that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was very prominent in the whole picture. I thought you were going to tie it into your study.
No,
But thanks again. Hopefully you'll see you tomorrow.
where are you going to be?
Right here. I bet you're still not getting your emails, are you?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I might listen online. I don't know if Sean's going to go. I haven't heard from him. He might still be in Poland.
No, he's back. We
Oh, yeah,
saw we
okay.
saw he and Peggy
Peggy,
last
yeah.
Sabbath.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so thanks again.
Well,
Bill?
Well, as Hal said, and as we all know, it takes God's Spirit to understand. And, for me, I mean, most people they read the King James, and there's plenty of stuff in the King James, no man's ascended into heaven. You read on the day of Pentecost, Patriarch David is dead and buried. He's not ascended into heaven. There's plenty of scriptures that show God's truth that we in the church know. Uh, but I guess for me, it's what Satan's ministers, they twist around to come up with going to heaven, and all the junk that's out there that they falsely believe. That's not really a big problem because we can see the plain scriptures. Daniel, they sleep in the dust of the earth. But what bothers me and some people is what they twist around, like taking that scripture. We'll send you the comforter. Jesus said, "Well, I'll send you the comforter, and he will guide you into all truth." And they jump on that and say, "See that's the Holy Spirit, and that's because it says he." And then when you learn a little bit about Greek, the word parakletos is in the masculine form as a noun, so you have to have a masculine pronoun. So there's so many little things, and even in the church, we have things like probably 20% of the people believe that Jesus didn't keep the Passover; he kept the Lord's Supper a day early, and those are things that are smaller items because we all pretty much in the Church of God know God's putting together a family. The first resurrection, the second resurrection. I mean, even the Seventh-day Adventists know there's two resurrections, but they got some crazy ideas about what happens with the millennium. But my point is the basic stuff we know, and I know a lot of people. In fact, my kid's mom that died of cancer, she said, I don't need to get into the arguments about whether Jesus kept the Passover. Jesus said, I keep the Passover. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know anything else. but for some of us, we want to get into some details. And there's some really cool stuff that comes out when you get into the languages to realize how things can be twisted around. And so I don't mean to, I didn't hear your presentation, but as we know, there's many, many English translations out there. Some of them from people that have many of the different divisions in Christendom. But anyway, that's the point I wanted to make is there's plenty of information in the King James Bible about die and go to heaven, the resurrection, sleep in the dust of the earth. And then, of course, the Trinity is a big one. But anyway, I'm sorry I didn't hear all that you had to say because I was on another Zoom. But I mean, I have the Schofield Reference Bible, and there's an interesting thing in the Schofield Reference Bible. I don't know if you're aware of that one, but where he talks about the pre-Adamic creation, and there's plenty of information to say there was past ages. That's an old Schofield Reference Bible, like what's this thing is 1909. And I got before the American Standard, I got just a standard Bible that was one of the first ones I got. But again, I hope, I come across sometimes as negative and all that, I think. And I'm just trying to say that agree with what Hal said. It takes God's Spirit. And there's many of these great scholars, but they don't have God's Spirit. So they get part things right, but then they get drawn off on the side. But we in the church know the awesome plan that God has a plan to save the whole world, and He's got a plan to do it. Thanks for listening.
Okay, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we have the coffee clutch. The topic for discussion tomorrow is 1 Corinthians 10:13. So you can look it up in your Bible tomorrow and be ready to discuss. Again, that's 1 Corinthians 10:13 is our discussion scripture. Go ahead, Chris. And keep in mind, everyone, Mark is not a night owl, so we need to wrap this up pretty quick here. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for staying up with us, Mark. I was reminded, when we're talking about different books, I was reminded about what it says in Revelations about books. Revelations 20, and if we start in verse 11, it says, "Then I saw a great white throne, and the one seated on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. And one of them was the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their deeds, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up its dead, and death and grave gave up their dead, and each one was judged according to his deeds." And in all of the times I've looked at different translations, I'm just amazed that they correlate on the specific instructions God gave to us about our relationship to Him and each other, and what we're looking forward to. The then what? After we sift all of this, the then what part is, what are we doing with that information each day of our lives, looking to the future and not hiding in our own space right now? That was my final thought. Thanks.
Olivia.
Hey, Mark. Thank you so much for your presentation. I actually really enjoyed it. I really also appreciate that you're being very honest and frank and how difficult it is to get through these translations and try to figure out what's being said. And I'm totally on the same page with you at that. But there's something really interesting about all these translations that are being given to us. One translation says this, another one says that, and it's very confusing. So what do we do about it? Well, you know what it sounds like a lot is in Genesis when we've got this creature that comes up to Eve and said, really said, oh, who is it that's questioning what God has said? The serpent. So here we've got all these translations that almost seem like they're questioning what God has said because they're giving us different translations. So I don't have an answer for it. So what I do is I do examine every translation just to cross-examine. But what we do have the Hebrew. There's no doubt about it, the Hebrew. We also have the Greek. And the best Greek is the one that Jesus quoted from. And he's God. He's God. So he's also quoting the best translation, and that appears to be the Septuagint. It comes about as close, and we've got Jesus actually sanctioning it and giving his approval because he does quote it verbatim. And so I think that carries a lot of weight just right there. But I still will examine other translations because you know what? I'm neither Greek nor Hebrew, so we need that broad spectrum. I really do like the Paleo Hebrew though, because it's a picture language, and when you have one little picture, it has 1,000 words that explain something far better than any other language can. So I do see that Hebrew would be a good original language. So with the Septuagint, yeah, I think that this is it's been around for at least 200 years prior to Christ, and Greek was being spoken 300 years before Christ even showed up. So it was a very what's the word for it? More than bilingual back in the day. I mean, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, it was all being spoken, but Greek is the majority of the commercial language. So the fact that nobody would have known it, that might have been small little villagers who were elderly and weren't getting around and really like to stick to the old ways of talking. And Aramaic would have been the common one. Then again, Aramaic is the language of Babylon. They came back from Babylon speaking it. And it was Ezra that had to get the priests to translate. They lost the language. Moses lost the language. The Israelites in Egypt lost the language. I mean, language is being thrown around and spun around. And again, it goes back to what God really said. So let's mess up the languages and, make it almost impossible for us to understand. So I'll follow Christ. I'll follow Jesus. He uses the Septuagint. I like that for a starting point anyway, but I do appreciate the presentation. Thank you.